up guys, I'm Evan from American Arson, and today I'm going to take you through where my pedal board is currently at in April of 2020. So let's jump in. If you don't know, American Arson is a two-piece band. I play guitar through a guitar amp and a bass amp at the same time. I actually play through a third amp as well. We do a lot of live looping, so after I create a loop, I'll send it over to another guitar amp just to give it a little bit different sounds. We're not going to be getting into that too much today because that could be a video all on its own, so I'll just be playing through the two amps today. On the guitar side, I'll be using my orange TH30. That is the head that I use live. And it's one of the only things that I bring down the stairs into my rehearsal space other than the pedal board and the guitars. I don't like carrying things down the stairs. My wife doesn't like it either because they usually bang up the walls. So these orange cabs are not plugged in. They're not usually down here. But since we had this extended layoff, I was tweaking a few things. So we're gonna be going through my rehearsal setup today. So that is a Seismic 2x12 cab. It has Celestion rockets in it. They're gonna sound a little brighter, a little buzzier, a little bit thinner than the V30s that I have in this cab, or certainly than the Black Shadows that I have in this cab, but they'll get the job done. And then we're going to be going through this 2x10 Gallien-Krueger Bass Cab. I certainly am not bringing my 8x10 bass cab down the stairs into the rehearsal space, so this one lives here. And then this lovely PV head that looks like it's from the 80s. I don't really know what it is, but it helps me to not have to bring more things down the stairs, so I love leaving it here. All right, let's jump into the pedals, and I'll go through the signal chain and give you guys a listen to some of the pedals. Okay, so my signal chain begins right here with the Line 6 G30 wireless. I've had this wireless for years. It's never let me down. I really like that it uses a 1/4 inch instead of those weird proprietary cables that you see sometimes. And I see a lot more wireless systems now that are going to 1/4 inch cables, or even just where you plug the transmitter straight in. And I like that a lot more than the crazy cables that are hard to find when you break one. From there, we go into the Digitech drop, and this is a really efficient tool. If you have songs that are in different tunings, most of our songs are in drop B. We have a few songs in drop A, and so I can use the drop to drop it down a step rather than having to go and grab another guitar, stopping the show, that sort of thing. So it's a great tool to limit the amount of stuff that you have to take out on the road. From there, we head into the Earthquaker Westwood. This is not my main drive. This is kind of a halfway there distortion that I like to use to dirty up verses and stuff like that. I really like this pedal because it has the EQ on board. You can see here with the bass and treble knobs. With some drive pedals, you can lose a little bit of the low ends, and I really can't afford to do that because I'm providing the bass sound as well. So it's nice to be able to put some of that back in with the Westwood. So like I said, this is something that I like to use on verses, sort of as we build toward the full drive sound on a chorus. So let's give it a listen. So yeah, it can get pretty dirty. I know that's probably some people's full bore distortion tone right there, but for me, I really like to use it to build toward a full distorted sound, and you can hear how it really retains a lot of the low end there. So excellent pedal. Doesn't really change the tone at all. Just kind of allows you to add some gain to your clean. From there, we head down to this loop switcher. I usually have 6 pedals on it. I only have 4 pedals on it right now. I had a little mini tube screamer over here that I took off the board because I wasn't using very much. And then I had another pedal here. We'll talk about that later. So right now, the 4 pedals that I have going into the loop switcher are the Mini Spark Boost over here, the EHX Pitchfork over here, Boss Harmonist right here, and then the New Neighbor Seraphim, which is a mono shimmer reverb pedal. I just use the loop switcher as a way to get these switches closer to the bottom of the board, so I don't have separate loops of multiple effects. It's more for convenience for me. The Spark is a cool little boost. I don't use the boost the way that most people do. I use it to bring a part up when I'm when I'm looping. So if there's 3 or 4 loops going and there's a part that I know is more subtle and it's going to get buried within the other loops, I'll kick that in to just bring that part up a little bit, so that when all the loops are playing, that part will fit into the mix a little better. The pitchfork up here I have set always on the octave above setting, and you can do some really cool stuff, especially when you're doing some one note distortion type stuff with that. So something like this. So yeah, it has this that cool octave above sound that you can put when you're playing like a really deep, like one string kind of lead line. But the way that I really like to use the pitchfork is together with the harmonist and with the seraphim, and then with a little bit of reverb from over here with my EBow. And if you've never used an EBow before, it's an electromagnet that simulates basically a string sounds, and I really like what it sounds like when I have all 3 of these pedals going together. And we'll pop a little bit of reverb on there as well. So here's what the EBow sounds like with these 3 pedals. I really like how the shimmer kind of gives it that after effect, that little bit of a glow as you come off the notes. And then the harmonist and the pitchfork just allow that sound to kind of grow. So that's mainly what I use those pedals for. Every once in a while, kick in the shimmer on its own, but I have it on a pretty hot setting, so you can listen to it here. So that'll decay for a long time on its own. I'm gonna wind the volume knob down. We don't need to listen to that all day, but it's set pretty hot so that it can really make that EBow glow. So I don't use it a whole lot on its own. Moving on from the loop switcher, we head over here to my TC Nova delay. This is it has 9 presets. And honestly, I'm running out of space on it because we've got more than 9 songs that have delays. So I'm looking at upgrading pretty soon, but it's a cool little delay pedal. Does most of what I need right now. I usually use it on clean sounds, so we can take a listen to it here. So yeah, pretty much your basic delay pedal. Like I said, 9 presets are nice if you're used to playing a delay pedal that doesn't have presets, but it's gonna seem like nothing if you're used to playing something like a Strymon Timeline that's gonna have 200 or whatever presets to it. So I might be headed in that direction pretty soon. Moving on from there is the Hungry Robot Stargazer. I love this reverb because it's really 2 reverbs in one. You have the blue channel here at the top and then the red channel here at the bottom. Each channel has a dip switch that they call Sparkle, which basically just allows you to add a little bit of shimmer to the reverb. and the LED matches the channel that you're on, which is really cool. It's easy to keep up with. So if it's on blue, you're on the blue channel, and if you hit the red LED, then you're on the red channel. So yeah, let's take a listen to what they sound like next to each other. So first off, the blue channel, which I have without sparkle and with the reverb dialed back a little bit. It's just going to be kind of your standard reverb sound. So and then on the red channel, you're gonna see it's gonna glow a little bit more. So yeah, it's a really cool reverb pedal to have two reverbs in one, basically. And you can really take the reverb over the top if you start cranking those knobs and you leave the sparkle on as well. All right, next in the chain we have the Digitech Jamman stereo. That is my main looper for the live looping that we do. I really like that it has an auxiliary output, so you can send just the loop without any of the dry signal, without anything that you're playing live, but just the loop over to another guitar amplifier. And I also send it to Jesse, our drummer's ears, so that he can stay in sync with the loop. Like I said, we're not going to cover too much of the looping stuff today because it could be its own video, but I'll just go through a quick loop for you so you can see how I use it live. So yeah, it's a fun looper. It's really intuitive. I like it a lot. All right, heading out of the looper, we head over to my old Boss chromatic tuner that I've had for a million years. And I like to leave that in bypass mode so I can check my tuning as I'm playing. And so since that's in bypass mode and I don't use it to mute, I have this little mute switch here from Simple Switch. If you've never heard of Simple Switch, you can check them out on Reverb. They make utility type switches. The guy who runs it's really cool. He got this one out to me really quickly when I had some shows on the West Coast and my other mute switch wasn't working. So yeah, check it out if you need something like that. But yeah, just a simple mute switch. When the LED's on, you're muted. And when it's off, you are ready to go. So I know it might be odd to have a mute switch right in the middle of the signal chain. I'll explain the reason for that in a little bit. But after the mute switch, we head up here to the Mimic doubler. If you've never heard of the doubler, it's a great tool for someone who likes to play through multiple amps at once. What it does is one sound goes through dry, and then the other sound, you can see that this is where the board becomes stereo. The other sound comes out just the tiniest bit delayed and the tiniest bit detuned to make it sound like two instruments are being played, or two different players. Because even if you were playing with somebody in perfect lockstep, there would be those little subtle differences either in the way that you pick or just in milliseconds of timing, and that's what makes it sound like more than one person is playing a part at a time. So cool solution from TC for people who are who are in a two-piece band and only have one thing going at a time. It is a little bit weird when I turn off my guitar signal and just listen to the dry bass, because you can tell that it's a little bit, the tiniest bit delayed and the tiniest bit detuned. It feels a little bit strange to see your hand go down and the sound just be slightly delayed, but it's a really cool effect. And I leave that on all the time. And this is where the signal becomes stereo and heads over here to the EHX 720. And this is not a looper that I use live. This is a looper that, it's basically a sound bank where I store kind of ambient sounds, pads, stuff like that. Sounds that can go on in between songs, or maybe when I'm tuning, so we don't all have to sit in silence and watch me tune. And some of the pads we even take into songs or out of songs, so there's a little bit of a bridge between the two songs. But this is the reason why the mute pedal has to come before this, because I can be mute tuning and then still have, like I have an EBO pad loaded up right now. So I can be mute tuning and I could still have that pad going in the background, kind of leading us into the next song, as long as that next song is in the correct key. So yeah, that's the EHX 720. After that, the signal splits here to the bass side and to the guitar side. So I'm just going to talk about the guitar side first. So next up we have the Ghs Morning-Glory, and this is a pedal that I leave on all the time, and you can hear it in my clean tone. I know for some people this would probably be their gain tone. Little bit of gain in my clean, and I know most people would usually put this at the beginning of the board, but for me this is sort of where the guitar signal starts, is after the 720, after the mimic doubler. Yeah, the rest of it is guitar signal, but it's also bass signal. It's the two together. So in a way it sort of is at the beginning of my chain, which is a very short chain at this point. After the Morning-Glory, head into the decimator, and decimator absolutely essential with everything that I have going on here. You would hear a lot of nasty noise if I turn that off, and you don't need to hear that, so I'm not going to do that. After the decimator, signal heads over here to this JHS on-off switch, and that just allows me to isolate the bass signal if I need to. We don't have any parts right now where the bass signal is isolated, but it's really effective for sound checks, so the sound guy can just have me checking the bass side without me having to go back and physically turn off my guitar amplifier. It does give us the option to have a part where the bass side is isolated, so that's something that we might use in the future. All right, heading back to the EHX and now going to the bass signal chain. We head over here to the micropog, and this is something that I use the exact opposite way from the pitchfork, and that is to give the bass a little bit of a sub-octave. So I'm tuned to drop B, so if a normal bass player was playing in standard tuning, this would be like their second string from the top completely open. So pretty low, but not really low. So adding the micropog, that octave below, really allows us to get some of those deep sounds that you expect when you're listening to a full band, because we want people to say that we sound full, period, not just we sound full for a two-piece. And you can really hear that when I crank up the distortion. The sub-octave, which I have set about 11 o'clock right now, really starts to jump up, and the dry signal is still there. Yeah, let's listen to that right here. Especially hear hear when I go up on the octave chords in that lick, you can hear that low octave coming through. So it's really, really cool. And by setting the next pedal that I have here, which is the Boss Bass Overdrive, by setting that really hot and then turning down the bass amp itself, I can make sure that this effect really only jumps out at you when I'm distorted. Because I don't really want to be picking along clean channel and have that low octave below sounds, you know, almost sounding like a 12 string, but lower instead of higher. You don't really like that on the clean sounds. So I like to crank the gain and crank the level pretty high on the Boss Overdrive right here. And then you probably noticed that I have it set up so that I can kick the Boss Overdrive as well as my channel switcher for my guitar amp at the same time. So if somebody with a different size foot tries to play on my pedal board, it probably won't work for them. But I have this radial switcher down here that allows me to change channel on 2 amps at the same time. So my TH30, which is my main amp, and then the Orange CR60 that I use as a looping amp, I can change from clean to distortion at the same time, just with one push. These switches are actually locked together. That's why I have tape down the middle, because there's a link switch in the middle that locks those switches together. So really cool little tool over here. After the Boss Overdrive, the signal heads out to this bass on-off switch, and that is something that we have used where we'll cut the bass out completely for a verse or an intro, and then when you stomp on it and bring it back in, it sounds nice and full. The last piece of guitar signal chain that I have is over here, and this comes out from the looper. And so this goes in 2 directions. This is just a little JHS splitter box. This goes to the loop amp, so we can get that, like we talked about, that loop sound directly to the loop amp. And then we also have a clean loop, so before the amp hits it. I don't have that plugged in right now because that goes straight to the drummer's ears, so he can hear my signal completely unaffected, completely with no distortion on it at all, and then he can make sure that he's staying with the loops that I create. But then we also have a cab sim box that runs out of the back of the loop amp so that he can mix in the dirty loop sound as well, so it doesn't just sound like I'm, you know, plucking a unplugged guitar in his ears when I'm doing the loop, and he can mix that however he wants, or you know, depending on the type of room that we're in for that night. So that does it for the guitar and bass signal chain. So you probably notice these other 2 pedals that I have on the board. Right here, this is my vocal section of the board. The Boss VE20 vocal processor. That is my main vocal effects, and I have different effects set for different songs, so that we can have the tempos locked in with the delays. Some songs have more reverb, some songs are more saturated, some songs are a little bit more dry. And this way you don't have to depend on a sound guy who might not know your songs to add different delays at the correct tempos, or to add the right amount of reverb for the effect that you're going for on that song. And then finally I have the TC Critical Mass down here, and that pedal just helps to simulate gang vocals, so you don't have to pull 12 people up on stage to get that gang vocal sound. And that is it for the pedals that I have right here. You probably noticed this little patch bay right here that says, what should I put here? I had a different pedal there. I took off the board, and then I just threw that patch bay on there so I didn't have to redo all the wiring to make sure that my loop switcher is still working. So if you have a suggestion, if you're looking at my board and you're thinking, how in the world could he possibly survive without fill in the blank, let me know. Obviously it needs to be basically your standard stomp box size to fit in there. I also have room over here for another mini pedal. Like I said, I had the mini tube screamer over there, and I'm not using that currently. So if you have any suggestions for me, let me know, and maybe I will toss your suggestion on there. All right, guys, thank you so much for taking the time out to check out my current pedal setup. If you haven't heard, we have a brand new song out. It's called Unbreakable. It's from our album A Line in the Sand, which comes out July 3rd, 2020. So pre-orders for that are available now. I'll put a link in the description. And if you have a suggestion for what I should put on my board, put it in the comments below, and I'll try to read all of them and respond to as many as I can. Thanks so much, guys. Catch you next time.